the Ticats Audio Network. This is the CFL This Week with Bubba O'Neil.
Just 2 weeks of games remain before the CFL playoffs begin, and there are so many issues to figure out. Is Vernon Adams getting no respect for MOP? The Tiger Cats are proving that 2 QBs are better than 1. Did Chris Jones' decision to sit Trey Ford cost the Elks a playoff spot? And speaking of postseason, who deserves that 3 seed in the West? These questions and many more will be under the microscope on the CFL This Week. I'm Bubba O'Neil. Folks, welcome to the 3 Down Podcast. That's on the Ticats Audio Network that features the top analysts, columnists, and broadcasters from all across the country. This week, we got to sound that rookie alert. Ding, ding, ding. We've been wanting to get this member of Ryderville on the pod for a long time. She is the host of what seems to be the never-ending post-game show on 620 CKRM in Regina. Daniella Ponticelli, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And I love that you said never ending, because when I'm there, time flies. It's so much fun. And the next thing you know, it's been 2.5, 3 hours of taking calls, but it's a blast. Wouldn't change it.
I'm sure it is. Hey, he's no stranger to the BC sports scene on a local level, and he calls a heck of a game on the Lions radio network. Always pleased to have the man named the Moj, Bob Marjanovich. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Bubs, and I just have to make a confession right now, and that's that I've fallen asleep listening to Daniella on the Roughriders podcast. I listen to all the shows across the league to kind of get a feel, like, you know, the fans and what's going on. So I heard the doctor and Wes Cates. I listen to them. By the way, all this stuff about Wes Cates becoming the next head coach, you guys are killing me out there. So
it's so good.
So I decided to make that confession right off the get-go. I have never fallen asleep listening to your next guest, Matthew Cauz, just to let you know.
No way. And folks, his love for the New York Giants forces me to say that this fine broadcaster from TSN 1050 in Toronto has better time management skills than Mr. Tyrod Taylor. He's Matthew Cauz.
Jesus. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Let's. I'd rather talk about something less depressing than the Giants. And the only reason you haven't fallen asleep listening to me is because I'm loud and obnoxious, and I've got that shrill voice that keeps anyone awake.
I think we're off to a good start already,
great.
folks. Let's get to work. And I'm going to start with the Moj on this one, only because he brought it up on our recent broadcast between the Lions and the Ticats. So let's go right there. Is your quarterback, Vernon Adams Jr., getting no respect for CFL MOP?
Well, I mean, as I mentioned during the pregame show the other night, you know, you hear a lot about Chad Kelly, and rightfully so. You hear a lot about Zach Collaros and Brady Oliveira, and then Vernon Adams always just kind of seems to be an afterthought. But when you look at the numbers, I mean, he's right there with Zach Collaros. I mean, they are like, there's really not that much to choose from in terms of touchdowns to interceptions, and even in terms of passing yardage. Vernon has something like 500 more yards than Zach, but it's interesting. It just seems to be this thought process when it comes to Vernon Adams. Yeah, but, right? There's always this yeah, but with Vernon Adams. So I just think he should be a little bit more involved in that conversation. I'm not saying he is the MOP, but he deserves to be in the same breath with Zach Collaros and Chad Kelly and Brady Oliveira.
Matthew Cauz?
100% agree. I'm an Argonaut fan, but I think Vernon Adams probably deserves it a little bit more than Chad Kelly, who's been one of the best stories in the CFL. BC can still win the West. They're 12-5. He leads in passing yards. He's second in touchdowns. And the weird thing is we always get voter fatigue. I figured we'd have that with Zach Collaros. I was like, Collaros, you've won it. Get out of here. Beat it. I am amazed. And if Adams doesn't win, you can make the argument for Collaros or Kelly. But the fact that he's not more part of the conversation, that's the confusing one. And you know what's the only thing I can blame it on? Is that 6-interception game he had against the Argonauts. Yeah. Maybe that's like an albatross that's been, you know, like Pigpen with the, you know, the black cloud that's just been following him all along.
Daniella, there's a saying around the Canadian Football League, and I don't know if you're hearing it at Ryderville, we certainly hear it in Hamilton. Good VA, bad VA. Do you think that's what's hurting him?
Yeah, I think it's always the question of which Vernon Adams is going to show up. Well, what we've seen since that 6-pick game is is a VA who does show up consistently at that. And I hearken back to that incredible comeback right at home where they were trailing 16-14 into the half, but then they, gave up 21 points to Ottawa in the third, and then they come back with 23 unanswered. To me, that's leadership. To me, that is outstanding. So when you look at that word and you start to go, okay, if we're going to look at one performance with the interceptions, can we look at one performance with a comeback and all of the different discussions around that? So yeah, I do think that more respect could be put on his name. I love the discussion between Kelly and Vernon Adams. No shade to Winnipeg. Obviously, Collaros is good, but it's just one of those things. If we are looking at voter fatigue, it'd be nice to bring something like that into the conversation.
I want to throw another thing in too, Bubba, and I think this has to be thrown into the equation as well. Zach Collaros has put up his numbers having a great running game supporting him and Brady Oliveira. Lions have no running game. I mean, they rank 8th or 9th in the league in terms of rushing totals. So when you're playing the Lions, you're pretty much focusing on the passing game rather than, when you play Winnipeg, you obviously have to respect the running game. And the irony of that 6-interception game, and talking to Rick Campbell afterwards, they didn't want to take Vernon out. He was their guy. And even though he threw 6 picks, and that tells you a little bit about Vernon. I mean, most quarterbacks will get gun shy maybe after 2 or 3 picks. Vernon is slinging it. He's still going to sling it. And I think by not taking him out in that game, Rick Campbell kind of sent him the message for the entire season. Hey, you are our guy. Despite the fact that we have Dane Evans, a capable backup, guy's been started 2 Grey Cup games right behind you. You are our guy. There's no question about it. And I think that moving forward probably did a lot for Vernon Adams Jr.'s confidence.
Matt, when you look at what's going on with the BC Lions and the fact that they are knocking on the door for that West title, I mean, and that I think it's a fair discussion that, Vernon Adams has put together an outstanding season. But do we ever get sometimes a little tied up in the CFL with this award, with the meaning of MOP and MVP? Is that what's screwing it up for him?
Don't you dare take the O away from the CFL because it's outstanding player. Because if we want to do valuable, well, now we're putting in a whole other set of different metrics. By the way, if it was valuable, then Vernon Adams wins it because Chad Kelly has this incredible offensive line and a very good running game. Winnipeg has an incredible running game. There's more things around helping to lift the quarterback. And don't get me wrong, Vernon's got all the weapons. You can argue the best wide receivers. You don't put up that number without players around you. But if I don't want the V. I don't want the most valuable player. I like having the most outstanding player because I think it helps to really define who had the best season.
Last one to you there, Daniella.
Pardon? About
I said last point to you on the Vernon Adams.
Sorry, I was just getting all wrapped up in what everyone else was saying. But the biggest thing for me is that, he has shown up more and more. I'm loving what he's doing with BC. I don't love that he's, that the Riders are where they're at, but that's another discussion for another day. This is about VA. I mean, to be honest, watching the television broadcast, there's a lot of hype around VA. So I think it just depends which ear you're listening with, because when we meet in the middle in Riderville, we are hearing more Kelly, Zach, but at the same time, it's not like we're not hearing anything about VA. In fact, our game against BC, it was all they were talking about on the broadcast.
Moj, just to make sure here at this point here of this broadcast, is he a go for this week?
Yeah, he's a go. I was at practice yesterday. They just basically had a walkthrough, but he was running with the ones. He feels fine, so he will play Friday against Calgary. Adrian Green, the safety, however, suffered a knee injury, and he will be out of the lineup. But no real big hit there in the sense that the Lions have kind of rotated Green in for Mojay and Ragumba in terms of their packages. So Green is out, Mojay back to safety, and then Ragumba will start at that weak side linebacker spot.
Now, speaking of rotation, the Hamilton Tiger Cats for 2 straight games have utilized the talents of Bo Levi Mitchell and Matthew Schultz, which opens up the conversation. Are they getting comfortable with this? Is this a plan of attack, Matthew Cauz? The 2 QB system, can it work and get this team to the Grey Cup?
First off, I love the transition you just did there. The segue into this was aces by you, Bubba. I love what Hamilton is doing right now, just easing Bo Levi Mitchell back in, like me going in a hot tub at a La Quinta. And apologies to everyone else at that hot tub. You wanna ease in, and that's what they're doing with Mitchell, with that the injury, kept the surgery. I love what they're doing. Just a couple series against Saskatchewan, plays a little more than a half against the BC Lions. Get him ready. Now, when the playoffs start, I don't want to see that. I'm a traditionalist. Who is your quarterback? Who's the guy? And I think back, actually, if we're going to do a Saskatchewan thing here, and this is a long time ago, 2017. Toronto beat Saskatchewan 25-21 in the playoffs, and Chris Jones, imagine that, him being a little untraditional, what kept flip-flopping between Kevin Glenn and Brandon Bridge. So I love what Hamilton has done the last couple weeks and what they'll do after the bye. Get Mitchell ready, good for Schultz, and then come the playoffs, Bo Levi Mitchell starts and finishes the game, unless he has 6 interceptions.
Daniella, the conversation for some is that one guy can't get in a groove. But it looked like, Bo threw that pick 6 against BC, but he cleaned up pretty well. He started pretty good, threw the bad pick 6, and then played pretty good, and then exited the game. Is this strategy, I think, because both quarterbacks offer something different?
Absolutely. When Hamilton was here in Regina just a couple of weeks ago, I was on the Ticats sideline, and you could just tell everyone was comfortable with this. So that's a big thing with the 2 quarterbacking system. It needs to be organic in the sense that the guys need to buy into it, need to want it. Ego's got to be out of the way. You need to know, okay, I'm not going to get that groove in the sense, but you can just as well. If you know that you're doing this amount or you're prepared for this amount, there's a different way to get ready for it. And I loved actually what I saw on the sideline. I saw a team that was loose, that was good, and then they came through with the win, obviously, for the Ticats. But Matthew, I was pointing at you because I thought you were going to go back to 1989. I thought you were going to go back to 1989 Riders when you're talking about going way back. I'm not
that old. I know I have gray hair, but I'm not that old.
Well, just because you had Tom Burgess and Ken Austin, right? And that was a 2-headed monster that worked beautifully for a team that was 9-9 in the regular season, very rocky regular season, and then they go in and they win the whole thing. So to me, if you've got a system that works, don't break it. Don't buy into it's got to be one or else. Because if this is working for you, you've got the right players to do it. And from what I saw, those 2 are happy with what's happening.
I'm going to go Ricky Foggy, Matt Dunnigan, 1991.
Yeah.
And if we're going to do the rotate, I'm going to bring a little Toronto into this.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I'll top all you guys. Joe Barnes, Conridge, Holloway. So there you go.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
I love it.
Skewing young today.
Mo, do you think this is just an effort to get, Bo Levi on a pitch count, basically, and then ramp him up? Or is this something that's really realistic, especially if it's not for the entire season? It's kind of for the short-term sprint to hopefully a Grey Cup for the Tiger Cats.
Well, I'm going to make a bold prediction right now because I just make these things every so often. But Matthew Schultz will be your quarterback if you're going to have any success. Bo Levi Mitchell has an outstanding resume. He has done so many things in the Canadian Football League, but especially out west, having seen Bo Levi 2-3 times a year, barring injury. Even when he was in Calgary 2 years ago, I looked over to Julio Caravetta one game, and right in the middle of the game, I said he will not be the quarterback by the end of the year, and that's what happened. Jake Mayer came in. I just think it's he's at the end of the line. Can he still be effective? Of course he can. But he's not the Bo Levi Mitchell that we've known in the past. And I think looking at Matthew Schultz, guys, look at the game against the Lions. Matthew Schultz led the team on a scoring drive every single time. They scored in their last 6 drives, and I think Schultz was the quarterback for 5 of them. Maybe at least 4, probably 5, I believe. So I think when it's all said and done, it's going to be Matthew Schultz that will be your quarterback if you're going to have any success. And I say that because he gives you so many options. You can run with the ball. You can throw the ball. When you have a running quarterback like that, it just changes your entire mindset in terms of your defensive front and how you're going to contain them. So I don't think, obviously, Bo Levi doesn't have that element to his game. But like I said, when I think it's all said and done, I think it's Matthew Schultz who's your quarterback and who's going to be your quarterback if you're going to have any success.
Matthew, this kind of, I think of the Coach O era, and he's been kind of hounded with this situation for his entire length as a head coach, and really, one time it's Masoli, and then it's Dane Evans. I mean, so maybe there is some comfort for him in terms of making quarterback selections.
Yeah, God, I mean, with Hamilton, and then, they had moments where they had Caleros, and then, he got injured, and it would be nice if Hamilton had a quarterback starting all 18 games. That'd be a nice treat for the city and for the organization. It is a good point you bring up that, I think sometimes I fall for this as well. When I look at Bo Levi Mitchell, I think about the past instead of looking at 2023, and maybe I'm being nostalgic and overly optimistic. Where those 10 straight completions after that horrible interception return, it's a good point. It could be Schiltz that starts against Montreal, and this could be me living in the past.
Daniella, you saw it up close. What do you think?
I think this is fantastic succession planning, if you will, because, you do have a good guy in Schultz, and he's really shown his development. But I'm enjoying the tandem as a completely, unbiased person here, because I'm not a Ticats fan. I'm not in that market. But just to see the competitive factor of the two of them is pretty nice.
It will be interesting to see if they continue to push each other, and I do believe it will be for the short term. But stay tuned. Ticats in a bye week. We'll see what happens next week in Montreal. Daniella, right to you, and this probably going to hit you right in the heart, right in the heart. That was a tough loss last week, and I heard Wes Cates, Ballsy's losing his mind. What's up with the Riders? But regardless of, is it six losses in a row? Help me out here.
Yes.
Right, 6 losses in a row. Yet there is still an opportunity for the Saskatchewan Roughriders to grab that 3 seed in the West. Is it theirs, or is it going to be the Calgary Stampeders?
I toiled with this. I won't leave you on too long on this, but I toiled back and forth because I think it's going to come down to patterns. I know that the Riders are on a 6-game slide. Last year, they finished on a 7-game slide. So are we going to look back that far? I don't know, different team. But looking back at the team that we have, or looking at the team that we have going into this week and facing Toronto, the Riders have been able to beat the best teams in this league, right? BC, Winnipeg, at home. All right. Calgary has yet to put together back-to-back wins this season. And now we're expecting them to go out and beat BC and beat Winnipeg. It's possible. Obviously, they have the tiebreak, and all that it comes down to is whether we lose this game. So I am going to choose Saskatchewan, but I am so ready for the hurt and the heartache and the pain, because at the same time, it has felt a lot of shades of last year. And that to me has been the painful part, because last year people were wanting to obviously correct what was happening. And then this year it's the same thing. Difference, though, is that we don't have our starting quarterback, or our franchise quarterback rather, in play, which is what we did have last year.
Matt, when she brought up the word pain, you were smiling. Why?
Because that's what being a sports fan is.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Pain. It's one dysfunctional relationship after another. I have to stay being a Giants fan, and I won't go on this long diatribe that there's a better chance. You know what? No, people are more loyal to their team than they are to their partner. But that's a debate for another day. Saskatchewan was the better team than Calgary. I mean, they outgained them. It was just all those turnovers in the third quarter. And to the point is that BC, Winnipeg, and Winnipeg and the Lions, they haven't clinched the West. So Calgary's taking on 2 motivated teams. Meanwhile, Saskatchewan's taking on an Argo team where, you never know who's going to be starting or not starting. It's an adventure.
All right, Moj, break the tie.
To quote the great philosopher king Michael Ball, neither of these teams deserves to be in the playoffs. So I'll go with what Ballsy says there. But, I look at the game. Okay, first off with the Lions, they're going to finish their season before Winnipeg even plays again, right? And Rick Campbell has made it pretty clear that they're going to put the heat on the Bombers. So there's no playing the backups. There's no sitting guys out against the Calgary Stampeders at home on Friday night. So I look at that game. With all due respect to the Stampeders, they'll take the Lions. So then it boils down to the last weekend. Saskatchewan's got to take on a Toronto team that in all likelihood will sit a lot of their starters or some of their starters. Then you look at Calgary playing Winnipeg, and there's the big question. If Winnipeg knocks off Edmonton, then Winnipeg, in all likelihood, will sit some of their starters in that game against Calgary. If Winnipeg loses to Edmonton, which is, don't kid yourself. Remember, this is an Edmonton team that led Winnipeg at the half the last time they played. So, Edmonton probably will be able to compete with them. But if Winnipeg has nothing to play for in that final weekend, I do like Calgary's chances in that game a lot more, obviously. And then, of course, with Saskatchewan. So I think it's going to boil down to the last weekend between those two teams. And, as Daniella pointed out, you're looking at patterns. You're looking at the team that's hot. I would probably have a tendency to go with Calgary just because they're playing better football right now.
Oh, interesting. Danielle, let's be honest here, okay? Labor Day happened, right? And it was marvelous. It was unbelievable to see what we saw at the field that day, and it was crazy what they did to the Bombers. And I started to wonder, are they going to push for second place? Well, here we are, in mid-October. What happened?
Well, Bub, you're definitely more optimistic than me. I never thought this team was going to be first or second. I was hoping for firmly planted third, which I know, set your sights high, right? Set the bar high. But that's just the team that you have. We're also working with our third stringer, a guy that wasn't even on the depth chart for the first
He looked
chunk
so
of the
good
season.
in that game.
He did. And you know what? I will even say this. The BC game was more impressive to me. The game before, now I know it's the Labor Day and it's the big stage and the incredible feeling, being on the sideline and watching that was amazing. But the BC game, there was an intensity from every single player that we hadn't seen up until that point, and then we hadn't seen it again after. And even in the Winnipeg game, it was dialed down just even a bit more, and then it just cranked all the way down after that. Part of me thinks, was it the headbutt heard around the world? I don't know. What was it that really set this team on the slide? Because that was the last time we won. So it's to really think about that. But I do appreciate what Bob said about momentum. Yes, Calgary certainly, they could take this and run with it. And they really only have to win one if the Riders lose. And to me, the way that we're mirroring the season last year, I'm braced for anything. I'm not convinced that the Argos, even with all of their backups, and they're not going to have all backups, could still come in and win.
Matt, this has got to blow you away. I can't remember a team in back-to-back years having this kind of collapse after some promise in the first half of the season.
Yeah, and the good point you brought up, Danielle, earlier. 1 year it's with the starting quarterback. Now it's with a guy who's
very
7'4", and
tall.
I know. We always focus on it. If he's having a bad game, well, he's tall. But all the bad luck. No, I shouldn't say bad luck. Excuse me. But that Saskatchewan Calgary game with just the turnover on downs, Calgary had 200 yards of offense in that contest, and just right now with Saskatchewan, they feel a little snake bit. What I wonder about is, does the fan base want the Roughriders in the playoffs, or do they want them out because maybe that leads to a bigger shakeup with the front office? I imagine that debate is going on among the minds of a lot of Roughrider fans.
Can I field that one quick? I mean, we've heard it many, many times, but people will always skew drastic, right? When things are not, and we know that. But what I mean by that is, even at the beginning of the season when we had wins, people were upset that the wins weren't better. So we didn't deserve those wins. And I remember saying, excuse me, I'll take all the wins we can get, knowing
careful what you
anything
wish for.
can go down the line, right? So what I'm trying to say is, yes, you're right. I think there is a contingent of fans who are secretly saying, you know what, if this just goes down the tubes like it did last year, maybe that wholesale change we've been waiting for is happening. I caution that and say, even if we get to the playoffs, there will be changes, folks. Rider Nation will not be the same. Riderville will not be the same next year. It can't be. And also there will be changes just by merit of contracts ending and certain shifts that will be happening. So that's all I'll say to that. But yes, Matthew, you hit the head. There's definitely a contingent of fans who feel that way. Just send it straight down the toilet. Let's flush it out.
Well, I think the big thing, and Daniella can probably weigh on this, obviously, doing the post-game show for 8.5 hours every game. Consumer confidence, and just listening to you guys' post-game show, it just seems there is zero consumer confidence in the Roughriders coaching staff and the Roughriders front office. And from what I understand, they're bumping up ticket prices next year. So if I'm not mistaken, Daniella, maybe you can correct me on that. I believe I saw something about ticket prices going up. But regardless, it's about consumer confidence, about your fans having confidence in the front office, in the regime that you have in place. And right now, I just don't see that happening in Saskatchewan. And if they want to get some of those fans back in the building, they're going to make some changes.
Okay, very quickly on the tickets, because that's a good point. So everyone knew this markup was going to happen. It had to do with the package that was in place. I believe it was around COVID time to really solidify the season ticket holder base. So they knew, okay, it's going to have it's going to have a limitation on it. And so that is being up. Now, the good thing is that the team, it was going to be a drastic markup, a very drastic markup. They've scaled that back. There's still a slight increase. So I'm not saying that there's no jump, inflation, whatever you want to say. Plus, our government put in PST on event tickets very recently. And so prior to this, the riders had said, hey, if you get your tickets at this time, you will save it and not have to have that PST, that sales tax extra. So yes, there's now quite a big markup, because when you're looking at adding all those extra percentages on, that's what's going to do. And just to that point as well, the confidence, the consumer confidence. I've thought about this a lot. We've had people crying on the show the last two games, crying. They're just heartbroken. And I've always thought, people can get over mad. People can be mad and get over that. But being sad, like truly, truly sad, that can hurt. Crying. Just
the good thing, at least there's still at least there's still good emotion there, Daniella, because the thing you don't want is apathy. Once people don't care, once people don't have any emotion associated with the Riders or any sports team for that fact, that is when you've hit rock bottom, when your fans become apathetic.
So, yeah, between sadness and apathy, it is tough. But I do think a lot of these fans, especially the ones who call in, they are really passionate and they will be back. It's just a matter of to what degree. Is it going to be for an entire season, or will it be for a few games?
Matt, let's clean up on this here. Whoever does get that 3 seed, is it one and done? Or is this when the wild and wacky CFL hits?
It's single game elimination. It's, a tip ball interception, and suddenly they, I apologize for the cliches. And suddenly the plucky team's got life. The team that's the heavy favorite starts to feel the pressure. Absolutely. Either Calgary or Saskatchewan, at the very least, could put a massive scare in whomever they are playing in the BC Lions or Winnipeg. And also, Argonauts aside, I don't think we have that true juggernaut like some of those Calgary teams when Bo Levi Mitchell was at his peak, or Mike Riley in Edmonton, like some of those really great teams. So absolutely a scare could happen.
Trey Ford sat on the bench for Taylor Cornelius for the better part of half of a season. And I think it's fair to say that under Trey Ford at quarterback, the Edmonton Elks have been a better football team. And there are some out there that believe the Elks, Daniella, would have made the postseason if number 2 was at quarterback. Your thoughts?
Emphatically, yes. However, there was also a change at the OC. And I think, oh, hi, my cat says hi. But what I'm trying to get at is, everything, I'm such a believer in things have to happen as they do. So it's really tough for me because I'm looking at Trey Ford like, man, I would have loved to see how he handled this season from the start. Imagine Edmonton gets that home win way early. Well, they get a win earlier, but a home win even earlier. Like the confidence in that team, I think they would have easily used, bumped Saskatchewan. If everything was the same for the Riders this season, I feel like they would have bumped us out of that completely. I think back to the 12-11 game that the Riders won over Edmonton here at Mosaic. If Trey Ford was in and everything stayed the same with the Riders played the same that game, I think Edmonton would have gotten that. That's one more win already. And so tick, 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 right? And then that would have been a tiebreaker if everything else stayed the same. So yeah, I feel pretty passionately about that. I'm loving what I'm seeing from Trey Ford. He's an exciting guy, and there's so much to build around. But I do think that you needed to have the changing in the coaching as well. You needed to have that chip on Trey Ford's shoulder as well.
Moj?
It's a tough one. And I say that because it's easy to look at it and just say, put Trey Ford at the start of the year, look what he did, boom, another win or two. But, you just wonder, you heard stories about Trey Ford not being ready, that he had a bad camp, that he needed a little bit more time. The other thing, too, is that once he starts the first game of the year, there's more of a book on him in terms of defensive coordinators being able to game plan. I thought what Ryan Phillips did in that game against Edmonton and what the Lions defense did, they completely neutralized his mobility for the most part. It's a tough one, but I'll say this. Would they have won one or two more games with Trey Ford? I'll throw that into I'll take that and say, yeah, they probably would have made the playoffs.
Which could have been the difference. And Matt, it just did seem like, and you're right, there were definitely words out there that Trey wasn't in the proper shape when he came in camp, and maybe the coach was a little bit upset, but it maybe seemed to be at a point, maybe a third of the way of the season, that we were getting force-fed Taylor Cornelius. Like it just seemed like, why are you so resistant to getting Trey Ford in the game?
Well, again, Taylor Cornelius, really tall. Let's not forget that. Very, very tall. Also, shout out to Daniella's cat that is just sitting behind her right now, just doesn't care what's going on. This is my land, and I shall recreate wherever I see fit. So shout out to your kitty cat.
What's the cat's name?
Yeah, good question. What's the cat's name?
Her name is Tonks.
Tonks.
Yeah.
Hello there, Tonks. The thing is maybe who knows if Trey Ford would have been as good if he started right off the top. Maybe he needed that little kick in the tonks to get, in the preseason and before the start of the year. that motivation, to play as well as he did. But it's a great thought experiment. You lose the first game by 4 to Saskatchewan. You lose that horrible 12-11 game with Saskatchewan. Week 6, it's a 1-score loss to Hamilton, the same team that Trey Ford would beat a little bit later, 24-10. I love the thought experiment. I think they at least have one more win with Trey Ford. But the fascinating thing, and maybe we'll never know, or maybe we'll learn later, is to Trey, was if he goes on to have a great career, if he goes on to look as good as what we've seen, how much did the tough love or stubbornness from Chris Jones, did it have an unintended positive impact on him?
Mo, have you seen anything like this, like in your days of calling games, like a quarterback, like of this ability that really could be such a game changer?
Well, I think the big thing with Trey Ford is that he has the ability to extend plays with his legs, and just, that's what people see. But, the one thing about Ford, he is going to have to be, at some point, he's going to have to learn how to read defenses, how to make those throws, what throws to make. And I think right now a lot of people are getting caught up in the athleticism, and rightfully so. I mean, some of the plays he's made are spectacular. But Julio Caravetti always has a great expression. He says, some quarterbacks will just run to run. Other quarterbacks run to throw. And I think we're already starting to see that with Trey Ford, right? He's running, yet at the same time, he's still looking for receivers downfield. Conversely, you look at a guy like Dustin Crum. I think there are points this year where he was just running a run, right? He wasn't looking downfield and trying to make those throws. But that's the thing that's impressive about Trey Ford, is that he's running, yet at the same time he's still running and looking to make a throw. So, I mean, the kid's got all the skills. It's just, putting it all together right now and moving forward. But, yeah, I mean, there's going to come a time where, he will have to learn the skills of being a quarterback in terms of reading defenses, in terms of, making the necessary audibles. You name it, right? I mean, there's so many things that go into being a great QB. So give him time. I think, given what we've seen and given his personality, I think the Elks have themselves a winner in Trey Ford.
I think for the CFL, let's just hope that he's around next year, that there's not an NFL team that poaches him off next year. Like, I mean, it could be, obviously there's an incredible amount of athletic ability that I think any football team around the world would be interested in.
If I may be selfish for a moment here, shame on Nathan Rourke and anyone else to try to live their dream and make more money in the NFL. You're hurting my ability to enjoy the CFL at the highest level, and in the end, it's all about me. Trey Ford, never leave. Nathan Rourke, come back, because I am a selfish person who wants my sports happy.
I'm okay with that. This is not the NFL this week, so I'll go with that.
Hell yeah.
Matt, get us going on this one here. And I know there could be many opinions of this. I've already thrown this out to a couple of people, and boy, the opinions have been various. Flag football is now an Olympic sport. Okay? That's all. Your thoughts?
Okay, two things. One, the one Olympic event that needs to happen is not flag football, it's tug of war. Imagine two countries doing battle. Who's the strongest? America versus Canada. You have a men's division, a women's division, a mixed division. Suddenly Norway's taking on Sweden. And then in the middle, you need the mud pit. You need the mud pit, and everyone is wearing white. You would watch it, you know it. As for flag football, I love the idea of it because we'll get to see athleticism displayed, but I want full tackle football. I want a country that has never played football put a team together and get wiped out 99-0 by America, like when Alabama takes on North Tennessee Tech. So give me some tackle football, give me some tug of war, and let's get to it.
It's nice to know that day drinking is alive and well in cottage country in Ontario.
I'm in cottage country. What do you want me to do? I got a beautiful bottle of Bordeaux. Also, it's German Riesling. It's low alcohol. That's my morning wine is German Riesling.
Notice how he prefaces it by saying that's his morning wine. So you got like a rotation throughout the day. You're like my producer, Mike Whittingham. It's the same thing. Day drinking all the time. Morning wine, afternoon wine, evening wine, nightcap wine.
Of course, what am I, a monster? You start with the Riesling, move on to the Rosés, the high acidic whites, then move on to the reds. It's simple. By the way, earlier when you guys were talking about VA for Vernon Adams, volatile acidity, which is a very common trait in Italian wine.
Well, the fact that it's fall, does that change your opinion there, Matt? The season that we're in right now.
No, absolutely not. You just get a more full-bodied oak-influenced white wine, and you start with the whites. It's quite simple here, you know.
Driving this off a cliff. I love it.
Flag football there, Moj.
Sorry.
And I know your buddy Jim Mullen has a lot to do with this, so he's probably a pretty happy man.
Yeah, I think the more kids that play football, the better, right? And whether it's tackle or flag. And the reason I say that is the more kids you have playing flag, eventually more will gravitate towards tackle. And one of the things that, you keep hearing about, concerns of parents about the concussion issue and all that. So, there have been, and, talking to Farhan Lalji, who coached high school for many years here in the Vancouver area at my old school in New Westminster. And, just there have been a lot of concerns from parents regarding, concussions and contact and all that. So, I just think the more kids that you have playing the game at the flag football level, the better it is for tackle football in the sense that it will grow tackle as well, because those kids will gravitate, right? They might, if there's no flag football and your parents saying, well, you're not playing tackle, well, guess what? Kid doesn't play football, period. Now you're playing flag football, and maybe some of those kids that weren't going to play tackle all of a sudden convince their parents, or their parents go, okay, well, let's give it a try, right? You're having so much fun playing flag that let's move this forward. So I think it's a great thing for the game of football, whether it's flag, tackle, you name it, just to get as many kids as we can involved in the game.
Danielle, I agree. I agree with everything the Mo just said there about football, but in the Olympics. And I know, they recently just took out breakdancing, the Olympics, it just seems not like an Olympic sport.
Oh, goodness. I don't buy into that anymore. I think the Olympics has become sort of this experimental place to try out those different sports in there. The biggest thing that the Olympics is looking for is, can we do it within our parameters, whether that's we have gendered teams, whether we have this, whether we have that. So that's what they're looking at. And barriers to entry is huge. And so flag football, kind of tick, 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 all of that. You don't need the big schemes that you would for tackle football. Although, Matthew, Matthew, you made me laugh so hard with the 99-0 because I am here for the chaos. We know that the U.S. would just absolutely thump, well, U.S. and Canada would absolutely thump everyone else. And likely that might still be the case with flag, except at a recent sort of test run for this Olympics bid, right, which of course has a lot of backing from the NFL. So regardless of what we think about the sport, you've got big players, right? Big players involved. But at a recent test event, the Americans won the men's side, but it was Mexico that came through with the women, and they won in the final. So, that's kind of exciting. There's definitely a lower barrier to entry, which means more countries might be inclined to make those teams and be competitive with them too. So to me, I've never been someone who really cares. Like, I love the fact that breakdancing is happening next year, and then I guess they just decided to pull it the year after. So let's enjoy breakdancing for one Olympics. But I think they're just trying to figure out what could fit within it. And I'm not a purist in that sense. I'm definitely like, yeah, show off what you can do, make it cool. I might be interested in covering that or seeing more of it.
But Matt, you are a traditionalist.
I like to dabble in between the two, but yeah, there's part of me that's absolutely a traditionalist. But in the end, this flag football done right is a high level of athleticism, so I'm certainly here for that. I find I would probably tune into that more than say discus. Apologies to all the discus athletes out there, but you're frisbee, but with more muscles. And imagine like ex-NFL players like Barry Sanders gets in shape, or here comes Randy Moss. And to Moja's point earlier, if this helps to get more people, young people into football, I'm all for it. And again, apologies to discus.
I think you make a great point. And who's going to come out of the woodwork to be part of this U.S. team or Canadian team, right? I mean, how many of these athletes who have played the National Football League look at this and say, hey, this is the Olympics. I've never been in an Olympics. I want to partake in this experience. So I'm really interested to see the composition of the teams when it's all said and done. And I guarantee you're going to see one or two guys, maybe even more, on both sides of the border kind of
Tom
step
Brady.
out of the woodwork. Yeah, Tom Brady. I mean, hey, why not? Right? Can you imagine Brady in the Olympics playing flag? Well, I mean, he played flag basically his entire career in New England. He never got touched. So it's just, to me, it's going to be really interesting to see the dynamic of who comes out and plays for the respective countries.
Save this clip, because just watch when Tom Brady does step out as the quarterback.
All right, you guys, flag football for the Olympics. It's an Olympic sport. I'm in. I'm totally in.
Come on, Bubba, be positive. You're such a negative guy. I'm telling
Come
you.
on, I just started trying to stir the pot. Okay, game of the week. Only 3 games this week. Calgary at BC, Toronto at Saskatchewan, Edmonton at Winnipeg. Moj, the game of the week is?
Well, I think you have to go Calgary, BC, just given what's at stake for the Stampeders, and also for the fact that the Lions are not going to take their foot off the gas in terms of trying to track down the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. So to me, that's the game of the week, with all due respect to the other ones. The Lions clearly want to finish off their season on a positive note. Calgary is trying to track down Saskatchewan for that final playoff spot. So I think it's going to be a very good football game. Even for Calgary, it's a playoff game, right? I mean, all these games moving forward for the Stampeders are basically playoff games. So I think you're going to look at a very intense game, and looking forward to calling it on Friday night.
Danielle?
Took the words right out of my mouth. I have it in my notes, Calgary at BC. To me, that's where all the stakes are at. And of course, it happens to be the very first game of the weekend. But for the Saskatchewan Roughriders, it has big implications. So, I mean, certainly the Riders need to win Saturday if they have any real hope in this, and to kind of keep it, unless Calgary drops both their next 2. But yeah, we'll be keeping an eye on that game for sure.
Matt, any chance that the Argos take a pass and just forfeit the game?
Yes, please.
No. They need to get 16 wins. Get 16 wins, tie Edmonton, get Devarius Daniels his 1,000 yards. But I'm sorry, Bubba, I want to go in a different direction. It's a clean sweep. It's the game with the most implications is Calgary at BC.
Can I just go back to the Argos for a second there? And I know, Matt, again, you're a bit of a historian. Does this, and I heard this opinion from a Ticat fan, okay? Does this bother you in a sense that this team may be the best Argos team of all time?
For them to be the best Argo team of all time. They're going to have to win 2 more games in a row. You got to tie the regular season record. Then you got to win 2 more games. We've seen Toronto upset Winnipeg, upset Calgary, Ottawa upset Calgary. We've seen these juggernaut, behemoth teams lose in the Grey Cup. So they're going to have to do that. Then we can have the conversation. And the pushback is an easy one. The 96-97 Argonauts, stacked with all-stars, stacked with guys who eventually would go on to the Hall of Fame, taking on a Montreal team with Tracy Ham and Mike Pringle and lots of great defenders, and Jeff Garcia in Calgary. So you could say that maybe the degree of difficulty for those 15-3 Calgary teams was harder than what this current Toronto one is. So that is the pushback. But Toronto needs 4 wins in a row, then we can enter in the conversation.
Mo, do you see, you remember that team, the Doug Flutie team? They were unbelievable. Is there any comparison?
No, I mean, they're both very entertaining teams. They're both very solid teams. But I think the bottom line for me is if you want to be considered the greatest, and to Matthew's point about winning 2 more games, I think it's winning 4 more games. And that is winning out in the regular season and, of course, taking care of business in the playoffs. I don't think you can ever consider yourself the greatest team in the history of an organization if you can't win a championship. So for me, that will be the deciding factor with this Argos team. If they win the Grey Cup, put them up there, and you probably have a great argument for them being the greatest. But if they don't, I don't see how you can enter that conversation without a championship.
And Danielle, can I go to you for this Calgary at BC game? And maybe I can open up to all you guys as well, too, on this. I mean, we've been talking for pretty much every single podcast for the entire season that the Calgary Stampeders and their inability to score touchdowns has really hurt them. And that, you know, Rennie Paredes he's a possible MOP candidate, really, with the season that he's had. Do you see them having any chance at BC?
Oh, come on. Yes. I mean, it's the CFL, right? And that's what I love about this league is that there's always a chance. But yeah, I just think the Lions, they're playing great football. They've really dialed into their identity as a team, and they're at home, and there's just this electricity when they're at home. So it's a huge test for Calgary. And again, the Stamps have not put together back-to-back wins this season. Now that doesn't mean it'll never happen, but when a team reveals itself, you need to look at that whole picture. And yes, they beat the Riders last week, but a lot of teams have beat the Riders this season. A lot of 4-game winning teams have beat the Riders. Edmonton and Ottawa, we gave them their 5th wins. I shouldn't say gave them, they earned it. But it's just one of those things, right, where I just don't, like, again, I think BC would have to falter to really help boost the Stamps. I think if BC's playing at their level, I don't think Calgary's going to meet them there.
Matt, you have something called, I believe, your confidence level pool.
Yep.
Where is your confidence level with the BC Lions here in this game against Calgary?
It's 10 out of 10. They're motivated to win the West. Calgary, as you said, they have revealed themselves. We know who they are. We're near the end of the season. You know what? I'll go 9 out of 10. Begelton comes back, breaks a couple plays. Mike Rose gets a couple sacks. Like, you know, you can see the path. You know, Kadeem Carey, they use him more than what they did last week against Saskatchewan. But I'm going to go 9 out of 10. Vernon Adams and this team deserves that level of respect.
And Mo, a clean sweep for you here. I mean, you have to be confident, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I'd go 8. The thing is with the Lions sometimes they will have a tendency to be inconsistent, particularly on defense. So for the most part, you look at the numbers, they're great. But, you talk to Ryan Phillips, he always expects more from his defense. And I know he's not going to be too happy with the way they finished that game in Hamilton by allowing the Tiger Cats to score on 6 consecutive drives. So granted, I don't think Calgary's offense is a juggernaut, but they do have a great running game and with Kadeem Carey. So for me, I think the thing with the Lions, if they can put enough points on the board and make Calgary one-dimensional, take Carey out of the game, and then force them to throw the football, it bodes well for BC. And I think that's what probably will happen. And for Calgary, that's bad news because clearly they want to control the football, run the ball with Carey, and just keep it a tight game. But if BC puts points on the boards and makes them one-dimensional, now you're forcing Jake Mayer into throwing the ball, and he just hasn't put up the numbers that are required for the Calgary Stampeders to win on a consistent basis.
And Matt, just because I know you're familiar with with Coach O'Shea, we can't imagine that he would be just resting guys and toying with guys. Like, I can't believe that.
No. I mean, he comes from the most competitive-aholic world when he was a player. No, absolutely not. He's going to want to crush everyone.
Daniel, your same thoughts about that game?
Yes, the Winnipeg Edmonton one. Yeah,
Yes.
I don't see O'Shea taking his foot off the gas in that respect, and they have a lot to play for, and they've been in those positions where they've played teams like I think back to that Argos game where they were trailing the backup quarterback for Toronto, and they know that they've been in those situations before. But I will always say I chose Winnipeg that week anyway, and I was like, they're going to come back. They have that ability, and so I think that they're going to come away with this win no matter what.
Moj, clean sweep there for Edmonton.
Yeah, I mean, Winnipeg, they've got something to play for. I mean, they've got to win another football game to clinch first place if the Lions knock off the Stampeders. So, yeah, I mean, I just don't see Winnipeg taking the foot off the accelerator this week. Maybe next week. Maybe you play your starters for a half or whatever the case may be, but not this week. This week they've got to go out there and win a football game.
Something tells me that it's somewhere along the line in those 3 games there's going to be an upset, but we all have to watch and find out. You guys have been fabulous, much appreciated in terms of your opinion, your expertise, your wine knowledge. Matthew Cauz is always appreciated on this broadcast.
Expensive.
I mean, he's the sommelier. Like, this guy, he's the football sommelier. I don't know if there's a connection out there in the world like you. That makes you so unique.
Well, check out the Matt Talks Wine and Stuff with Interesting People podcast. I have interviewed Drew Bledsoe and his Washington State winery. So, I'm Peter Pan. I have sports, I have wine, I have no children. I mean, that's my life. I'm a professional uncle. I'm Peter Pan.
Which gets us to obviously our how can we contact you, Matty, if we want to talk wine or football with you?
Just mcauz56 on Twitter. I still call it Twitter, or just Google Matt Talks Wine. You'll find the podcast. It's easy.
Moj, you want to talk about the Lions or anything out there in the West Coast?
Hey, by the way, Matthew, another guy you got to get on is Dick Vermeil, who's got like a winery. So try to track him down.
I have interviewed him about it. Yeah, he's a consultant in California. It's a cool story.
Mm-hmm. If you want to track us down, of course, all you have to do is go online with Instagram or Twitter at The Real Moj. Bubs, I want to know how I want to try. What's your Instagram handle? Because I got to see some of these pictures of you in the Mercedes-Benz convertible driving down
fancy.
The main strip there in Burlington or wherever you drive around. We're going to find out your handle.
I don't know.
You're so humble.
Let me go find it. Daniella?
Come on, this is great.
This is to you, Daniella. People want to talk to you because I know there's so much. Well, hey, let's be honest. I mean, I think it's fair to say, and we all support our colors and our team in the Canadian Football League, but there may be no more passionate fan base than where you represent.
Oh, I love the Saskatchewan Roughriders fans. They're incredible. You can reach me also at Twitter. That's what I call it because X is weird, but Twitter.
It is weird.
At D Ponticelli. So hopefully you can figure out how to spell that. D Ponticelli TV. That's the handle there. And then I'm also, on Instagram and Facebook, but really Twitter is the best way to reach me quickly if you're just somebody I haven't met. I don't usually like to interact with people I haven't met on the other platforms. Just a little safety thing. We'll just leave it at that. So yeah, that's kind of how that goes.
And by the way, you are right. Saskatchewan fans are diehards. They have this old lady that phones her show. Well, when I was watching practices when Ken Austin were here, they had guys running around doing stuff. Yep. These guys are just walking around during practice. This lady's like 80 years old, and she's talking about watching practice every day. So, yeah, you talk about hardcore Saskatchewan's it.
That's what we love. Isn't that why we love this game? Quite honestly, especially from across the country. One quick question there for our rookie here. Danielle, of course, we have to do some research here, and of course, just finding out about your career and all. I hear the word Daniella Ponticelli, and I would think Italy. Is there does Greece come in somewhere here?
No,
No,
not
all right,
Greece.
okay,
No.
Fair enough.
But, yes. I'm just
don't-
laughing because I feel like this is the question I get asked the most. So that's
Really?
why, yes, I am Italian on my dad's side, hence why my last name is very Italian. But all four of my grandparents came from different countries, and I was born in South Africa. So just like throws a little wrench into everything. And then, but the Prairies have been home for the last 23 years. Yeah, last 23 years. So that's where I'm at.
Hey, Bubs, here's a little tip for you. If she was Greek, it'd be Nick or Christina. There's no Daniela in the Greek language. Every person you know that's Greek is either named Nick or Nick or Christina, right?
Yeah.
So every female.
Really great point. But I appreciate the question. I think that's great. People are very, I don't know if confused is the word, but they're always trying to pinpoint. They go, I thought you'd be Italian. And you're like, yeah, I am. I'm also.
I thought Swedish, by your last name. I thought Swedish.
We just want to get to know you, right?
Yeah, well, what other questions? Give me. I'm good.
Hey, folks, the Ticats Audio Network loaded with content for your Tiger Cats and, of course, your CFL lovers. Join us for the Coach O Show, the always hilarious Morielli and Hitch. And with that Grey Cup coming, who knows who will be in this game? It's creeping closer, though, folks, so don't miss the Bill Kelly. He's got countdown to Grey Cup. As I said, thank you so much, you three, for joining us to talk about the game that we love so much, and it's getting down to such a fun point of the year. Someone's going to be crowned a champion. Let's just see what happens. For the Ticats Audio Network, this is the CFL This Week. I'm host Bubba O'Neil. We'll see you next week. We're talking football. Enjoy your week and enjoy the games. Talk next week.